Two, one, and action.
Hi, I'm Andy White. This is Nick Peachy, and we're here with Herbert Puchta, the outgoing president of IATEFL. Nice to have you, Herbert.
Thank you.
You've been involved in a lot of different things. I know that you're an author, you're involved with IATEFL quite heavily. Can we talk a little bit about teaching and learning and what makes a good language learners? Because you're so experienced, to hear it from you.
Right. Well, you know, I mean, there's probably a number of factors that influence success or failure in the foreign language class. I think there's a beautiful quotation that comes from Earl Stevie, who says that success in the foreign language class depends less on materials, techniques, and linguistic analysis, and more on what goes on inside and between the people in the classroom. So obviously, Earl Stevie is not saying here that materials are not important, or that the strategies and the techniques that teachers use, that teacher training generally tends to focus on, are insignificant. He's also not saying that the teacher's own linguistic competence is insignificant, but he stresses the even more important role of factors that are maybe somehow hidden, psychological processes, the relationship between the students and the kind of classroom culture that the teacher manages to create. So I think that's probably the most important factor that influences success. And then of course there are others depending on the kind of age group that one teaches.
Okay, and how do you create that classroom culture to enable or help learning along?
I think it depends a lot on the kind of person the teacher is, on the personal relationship, on the sort of concept that the teacher has of their own role in a classroom. The teacher who sees the students not just as you know, little vessels waiting to be filled with cargo. Right. The teacher who sees the learning process as a process of interaction and mutual growth and mutual learning is the teacher who will be better able to create this atmosphere in class.
But that can be very difficult, can't it, for teachers who are involved in classes that maybe have 50, even 100 students in their class, to actually see all their students as individuals and be able to get them to interact. So that's a huge challenge. Yeah.
Although, of course, we know that there are countries around the world where teachers actually have quite a number of students, a big number of students, and we cannot say that all those teachers just have no success. It's amazing, actually, how much some teachers achieve in even classes with a lot of students. Of course, it's not the ideal situation. I think it depends on a number of things. The first thing is of course, the teacher also has to especially if you think of young learners, of teenage learners, the teacher has to set very clear rules and also make sure that students first of all really understand these rules and then also accept these rules. But when you think of like probably the most difficult age group, teenage students, they will always try to test the situation and go beyond, exactly, go beyond the rules. So we need a teacher who, in spite of the fact that their students' behavior might actually be rather disruptive or provocative or what have you, a teacher who accepts the person behind their behavior, which doesn't mean that it might not also require disciplining every now and then.
Herbert, I know that you're interested in things like creativity, imagination, multiple intelligences. I think that ties in really well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
How did you get interested in that? first of
Well,
all?
I mean, I was for a long time a practicing teacher myself, and obviously one of the most important objectives for me was to get as much as language out of my students as possible, and in order to do that, we need to try and activate their imagination. We need to try and get them engaged enough so they actually want to express themselves, so they want to tell their stories, in other words. And this is where the things you mentioned come in extremely useful. There's also the issue of when you look at the cognitive development of students, I believe that the foreign language class is almost offers ideal opportunities to develop students' cognitive capabilities. And since you mentioned multiple intelligences, this is one such frame that allows for the development of students' thinking skills at the same time as they are learning the foreign language.
Mm-hmm. Can you go into multiple intelligences a little bit? Creativity is clear, imagination is clear. But the theory of multiple intelligences, what is that all about?
Well, it's a theory created by Howard Gardner. And basically, it's about humans are not just intelligent in one way. We cannot really say this is an intelligent student or that's not a very intelligent student, because we have different ways of thinking and different ways of finding out. Some of us are very good in the area of logical mathematical thinking. Other people are excellent in what is called the verbal linguistic intelligence.
And those are the traditional ones.
And those are actually the traditional ones. Howard Gardner has initially specified 7 different kinds of intelligences, including things like the interpersonal intelligence, the intrapersonal intelligence, the ability to understand oneself, the musical rhythmic intelligence, the visual spatial intelligence, the kinesthetic intelligence.
Yeah.
I might have forgotten one or two.
I can remember somebody saying once that there was a kind of gustatory intelligence where people are stimulated to learn if they're eating or they're...
That's another theory.
And that was one of... And I always thought that I was that one, actually, because I always...
Sounds like a nice joke,
while I'm
actually.
working, yes. It's kind of nice. But going back to creativity a minute, I mean, I did some research recently following on from sort of watching one of Ken Robinson's talks on creativity.
That's on TED.
That's right. And my according to my research with teachers, about 40% of them claimed that they weren't creative at all in the classroom.
They themselves.
They themselves said that they didn't feel that they were creative in the classroom. You know, does that necessarily mean that they're bad teachers, or you know, should this 40% be worried about that?
Right. Well, I think this is an interesting point. I mean, also when you do workshops on developing writing skills with teachers, sometimes you find that teachers say of themselves that they are not very creative writers, they're not very good writers. And I actually think that has a lot to do with the kind of teaching they themselves experienced, with the kind of education they themselves experienced, that
the kind of
not enough
learning.
space was given, exactly, not enough space was given to the development of their creativity when they were students, either at school or later on at university or during teacher training. So I basically think that every person has the resources and the potential to be creative. It's a question of discovering or rediscovering those potentials, because when you look at a child, they're all creative, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, have you ever seen a child that is not creative?
Right.
And then the question is, where do those resources go?
Right. I think it might also be a self-perception that we feel that we're not creative, but of course we are. I mean, just producing language, that's that's
But we also
creative.
know, of course, that self-perception has a significant influence on our own performance. So if someone sees themselves all the time as somebody who can't be creative, it will be very difficult for them to actually access their own creativity.
Yeah. Herbert, you've raised a lot of really good points, and I'd love to talk longer. We need to wrap it up, though. It's been very nice chatting, and I might hunt you down later and get a little bit more conversation out of you, if that's possible. Yeah, thanks to Herbert.
Thank you.
And Nick.
And Andy.
Right. And we'll be back in just a few minutes with
Olga.
Barnashova. Thanks for watching.
Okay, thanks. See you in a minute.